Without further ado, we call on Oisín Brogan to open the case for the proposition.
Ladies and gentlemen of the University Philosophical Society, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to open my speech with an admission, in that when I first heard this motion, my first response was, as an atheist, of course Scientology is just as legitimate as any other religion, sure they're all poppycock anyway. So, that, you know, like, of course they are, but then, kind of reflecting on that and kind of not taking that approach, as tempting as it was, because really, it kind of doesn't really matter whether you're an atheist or a theist, in whether you consider a religion legitimate or not. Because all religions can't quantify whether they obtain the ultimate truth or not. So it doesn't really matter whether one religion has it right or not, because there's no way as mortals we can decide which religion does. In fact, if you talk to a firm believer of any religion, they'll only describe, if going on that grounds, they'll only describe their own religion as legitimate and all others as illegitimate. So I think that kind of idea that all religions are poppycock doesn't really matter in this debate, because we're talking about in legitimacy, as I go on to now in my first minute, to define, what we're talking about in legitimacy is kind of like whether we accept this movement, this set of beliefs within our society, and whether we acknowledge these sets of beliefs as if not positive to the society, at the very least neutral, and don't harm the believers of that religion. So the ones that we do believe harm people, that's cults, and we try as a society to disencourage the springing up of cults, and if they do spring up, to disband them as soon as possible. Not yet then. So I'm going to talk later in my speech kind of what is a cult and how can we distinguish between what a legitimate religion is and what an illegitimate religion or a cult is. But before I go, that's going to be my main second point. But before I get on to that, I'm going to kind of deal with kind of preemptively what people on side opposition tend to say that Scientology lacks, that other religions have, and therefore Scientology isn't legitimate. So, for example, it sounds ridiculous, but I'm going to deal with the religious one. People talk about the fact that Scientology isn't as old as our other more established religions means that it's automatically illegitimate. Now, it does sound kind of ridiculous when you hear it, but you'd be surprised how many people say that on the internet, in that you can't have new religions. And why this is bad for two reasons. As a theist, you can't really accept religion because God might at any time send his latest prophets. As an atheist, you can't really deny people happiness in accepting a set of beliefs just because it only got invented 50 years ago. So we'll discard that straight away. Another one that comes up an awful lot is that numbers kind of thing, and this kind of makes a little bit more sense. If you only have one person, is your religion legitimate kind of thing? And I'm actually going to say that yes, it is. In fact, if you have one person to stand up and say that no thanks, Andrew, that you're a legitimate kind of thing, that's legitimate. People who don't say that sort of kind of have to have a number you have to get to be qualified as legitimate. Now, why I say that it doesn't just come down to numbers is because if you stand up and say no thanks, Andrew, that I have a religion, that I can say that I am the God incarnate, and you should all follow me, kind of thing. That is a perfectly legitimate religion as laid out as we decided at the start, because you're not harming anyone. I'm not ruining my life by allowing that. And just because you're legitimate doesn't mean that we have to put at this point, we're going to point out the difference between legitimacy and being legally recognized. Because just because you're legitimate, I don't think means that you're a legally recognized religion. Because I think being legally recognized obviously comes with benefits such as people are allowed to take holidays on religious festivals, etc., etc. But I think that has much to do, Christmas, Easter, etc., has much to do with being part of our culture as to be a legitimate religion. So I don't think it's got any basis upon the fact that you have a religious holiday, in the fact that we have 2 weeks off at Christmas. So I don't think that kind of comes into play at all. Next thing we're going to talk about is kind of the sanity of claims, and this kind of comes out a lot because, like, people in critiquing Scientology often stand up and, have you heard what they say, guys? It's absolutely nuts. How would anyone like kind of believe this thing? And it is pretty, like, some of the things in Scientology is pretty barney, in that they believe in that we used to be thetans. We were spiritual beings, and then kind of created the world. If I'm misrepresenting, I'm sure our second speaker will kind of correct me on this, who then created the world and then kind of became fascinated with the world and became bodily within it. And then over time forgot that they were great big wonderful spiritual beings, and Scientology is meant to be trying to reclaim your spiritual ideas, which sounds kind of crazy. Alright? But then you have to turn around and say, or obviously other legitimate religions like Christianity, which believes after the end times, 144,000 Jews will sent to heaven and everyone else will be reanimated to live in the perfect world. And that's not even getting into the zombie carpenter stuff. So, like, just because your claims aren't particularly sound doesn't mean that it means you're a legitimate religion. Go on.
If I said A contains truths with Scientology claims to God, then does that just make a business? Bearing in mind that not the same thing as what the Catholics did with their church.
Yeah, okay. Having to pay for your religion, oh, Jesus. Okay. Smoothly swiftly. I'm going to actually come to that, Andrew. That's my last point. Unfortunately, I thought I had no more time. Anyway, moral guidance. People talk about Scientology doesn't have any moral guidance, and people who haven't actually looked into Scientology at all. They have several ways of how to live better thing through counselling which you have to pay for. I'll come to that. And also they have a free booklet which is called The Way to Happiness. So, you know, just as much as God as anyone else. Anyway, moving on to is Scientology a cult? Okay, very quickly, unfortunately. But why we don't like cults is because cults tend to take away your, like, we say you have freedom of choice of religion. Okay, you can believe whatever you want to believe. What we think cults do, and what defines them as a cult, is that it doesn't let you, it takes away that freedom of choice. In that through brainwashing, through cutting off ties to other people, and through it takes away your choice, and then exploits you in that you have suicide cults where you can commit suicide, or they just take all your money and run. Right? So we say, does Scientology do that? Do they brainwash people? Do they force you to cut off ties to other people? And we say in both cases that they don't. Sure, there's been claims washed up against them, but all of them have so far been claims unfounded or untrue. And then finally, whether you can pay for a religion, and unfortunately I'm going to do this quickly, but any religion starting up needs to be able to get some way of starting itself. It needs to be some way to contribute funds to spreading the word. If your way of doing that is making sure that people pay at the start, then that's just as legitimate as any other way. And sorry that was horribly timed, but I hope that you think that was decent enough. Pay attention, folks.